executed, you know what? Right. Now, with that being said, this tweet right here popped up online. I'm going to read it to you for you. It say Corey Close just said the entire Indiana Fever organization, unprofessional. Lin Dunn and now ESPN Ryan Ruoco called off Amber Cox. Let's go women empowerment. This is what it stated. Caitlin Clark is the best pick and roll player in the league. I still don't think the roster there is perfectly constructed. And you know who do the roster construction? Let's just say Lin Dunn, Kelly Kristoff, and hell, even we got to throw.
There are signs that national sports media may be splitting on the ongoing Caitlin Clark situation unfolding in Indianapolis. The Indiana Fever front office has drawn criticism for what many observers have characterized as a coordinated effort through local outlets to undermine Clark's standing. ESPN analyst Ryan Ruoco has stepped into that conversation, addressing Amber Cox directly and weighing in on Stephanie White's usage of Clark in pick-and-roll actions. Attendance at the most recent weekend game revealed very little of that play actually being run. The Clark and Alia Boston pick-and-roll has been the subject of significant discussion, and for good reason.
Hell, even we got to throw Stephanie White in there because, hell, she's coaching this. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to keep you guys any much longer. Let's listen to the entire clip. Roll the clip.
You know what? I'm going to say the Indiana Fever, they're an electric vehicle right now, and I want to know, did they just get a charge? Okay? Anybody who's ever done any kind of reflection about emotions knows that sometimes it just all needs to come out.
That combination previously lifted the team to levels of production that had not been witnessed before. That action, with proper disguise from White and tight operational discipline, gives Indiana a realistic path toward a WNBA title. A notable social media post made the rounds summarizing the media landscape around Clark. The post referenced a prior statement from a former league executive calling the entire Indiana organization unprofessional, then pointed to Ruoco's criticism of Amber Cox as another signal of the broader reckoning underway. Ruoco's specific commentary centered on the roster construction, stating that Clark remains the premier pick and roll operator in the league, but that the personnel around her has not been assembled to maximize her spacing needs.
Sometimes it just all needs to come out, and then you go from there, right? Rather than repress feelings, and that turns into resentment, and then that's kind of a weight you're carrying. And one of the curses for Indiana is every single one of their games, every single moment they have, is scrutinized on a level that no other team in this league experiences, right?
Yeah.
But one of the blessings for Indiana is that gives a vehicle.
Responsibility for that construction falls across multiple decision makers, including Landon, Kelly Kristoff, and White herself, given her dual influence on the program. In his full remarks, Ruoco described Indiana as an electric vehicle in need of a charge. Drawing on the psychology of suppressed tension, he argued that teams carrying unresolved friction tend to accumulate resentment, and that the public sideline episodes between Clark and White, while uncomfortable, may have accelerated a necessary clearing of the air. The team reportedly held a 2-hour meeting in the days following a rough performance against Portland, during which players and staff worked through grievances and attempted to realign. Indiana entered that West Coast stretch at 4-2, with Clark averaging 24 points and 9 assists and drawing legitimate MVP consideration.
One of the blessings for Indiana is that gives a vehicle to get tension out in the open early, right? And so Indiana has this moment where, you know, they put on a horrendous performance against Portland. And, you know, because before that, they were 4-2 going into that West Coast trip, and Caitlin Clark was an early MVP candidate, averaging 24-9, right? It's not like the sky was falling. Nobody really played well against Golden State. They still managed to be in that game, lost close. Okay, whatever.
The Golden State loss was competitive, but Portland exposed real problems, both in execution and in the visible disconnection between the players and the coaching staff on the floor. Ruoco drew a comparison to the early LeBron James era in Miami, noting how every small moment involving the Heat got magnified into either a crisis or a coronation. That same phenomenon surrounds Indiana now, where individual losses prompt widespread questioning and minor wins generate championship projections. The difficulty in evaluating a team's actual trajectory when every micro moment gets macro treatment is a direct consequence of the attention Clark brings to the franchise. On the roster itself, Ruoco acknowledged that Monique Billings brings real value through screening and has been adjusting after starting the year less than fully healthy.
The Portland game, they played poorly. There was obviously well-dissected sideline drama. There was also just like you could feel a lack of connectivity and verve in how they played. But you know what it did? It got them to have a 2-hour meeting that I know a lot of the players have talked about now this week, where you get to talk about everything and you get a chance to get on the same page and connect the players and the coaching staff. And so I'm really
the core of Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell remains as strong a three-player anchor as any team in the league, and that foundation gives Indiana a legitimate ceiling regardless of the surrounding construction concerns. Indiana followed up that difficult stretch with a win over the Atlanta Dream, a Commissioner Cup contest. That victory came with minimal use of the pick and roll, which raised its own questions. The upcoming matchup against New York presents a stiff test. The Liberties still feature a formidable group with Brianna Stewart, Jonquil Jones, and Sabrina Ionescu, who has a history of producing big nights.
I'm really curious. We're recording this Thursday morning. They're playing Atlanta tonight. That's going to be a tough game for them, right? Mm-hmm. I'm really curious how they respond because I feel like now I still don't think their roster is perfectly constructed. I do believe that, you want Caitlin Clark's the best pick and roll player in the league. You want to stretch four. This Indiana roster hasn't been constructed to give her the most space possible, in my opinion. However,
Indiana's defensive rebounding remains an area of concern, as the team has shown a recurring tendency to lose focus on that end while maintaining intensity offensively. The Commissioner Cup carries additional financial stakes, with player bonuses reportedly reaching around $100. 000 per player under the new CBA. Indiana won that competition last season, and the elevated prize money may be contributing to the sharper focus currently on display. Whether that carries through a full second half of the season against tougher opposition will determine how seriously this group needs to be taken as a contender. The WNBA is back in the spotlight, and this time the drama has nothing to do with what happens on the court.
Constructed to give her the most space possible, in my opinion. However, Monique Billings has other strengths, screen assist. She's just getting acclimated, started the season a little hurt. And you have a big three that's as good as any big three in the league, right? With Aaliyah, with Kelsey, and with Caitlin. So this team has a chance to be great still. And I think that they can use what just happened and their controversy as a springboard to find some deeper connectivity, to play with a verve. And I'm excited to see.
Brianna Stewart made waves recently after publicly pushing back against the league's reported plan to have players wear a USA 250 patch during the All-Star Game, the patch, tied to the country's 250th anniversary celebration, has already been adopted by the NBA, NFL, MLB, UFC, and NASCAR. The WNBA was not part of the original January announcement when those leagues signed on, and now the organization appears to be walking carefully around the whole situation. A WUMBA representative sent a statement to Sportico reading, "The league is looking into the best way to honor the country's 250th anniversary, and that no final decisions have been made." That response came more than a day and a half after Sportico first reached out for a comment.
Whether or not that happens in the aftermath, because I believe their electric vehicle may have just gotten an early season charge. And one thing I thought about, Jordan, was the way they're dissected reminds me of when LeBron went to the Heat and the Heatles, and how it was like every little thing from LeBron body language was going to be dissected. Everything, every loss felt like, what's wrong with the Heat? They win a couple of, like, they're going to the finals, and it's hard to.
Stewart's post argued that no NBA player would have been free 250 years ago, and that the majority wouldn't have had full rights even a century back. She framed the patch decision as one that ignored the historical reality of who was and wasn't considered a citizen when the country was founded. She acknowledged the move was likely driven by money, but said that didn't make it sit any better. The reaction from the public was swift and overwhelming. Commenters came from every direction, and most of them weren't showing much sympathies for her position.
Keep blocking. God, what a weak league. That's unbelievable. The teams are weak. The league is weak. The players are weak. All of them are butthurt all the time. None of them can accept criticism. It's a joke. So, here we go. WNBA All-Stars, including Trump critics, set to don USA 250 patch. You would have thought Donald Trump.
One person pointed out that she apparently forgot a civil war happened. Another called her post-breathtakingly and deliberately ignorant, describing the combination of stubbornness and poor reasoning as a disaster in motion. Several brought up the fact that Democrats historically fought against the very freedoms she was referencing, calling that a piece of irony worth sitting with. One commenter raised the point that white women weren't exactly living freely in that era either, then went further by noting that the WNBA itself is owned by white executives, which made her framing of players as workers under an oppressive system land in an awkward place.
Trump was on this patch. Trump himself was on the patch. And, he's not at all. And now you got the WNBA trying to walk this back. Oh, let's look at this, guys. The WNBA is planning to have its biggest stars wear a USA 250 patch during this year's All-Star Game, according to multiple people familiar with the plans, joining a handful of other leagues.
Others went straight at the personal angle. Multiple people pointed out that she has never been enslaved, that countless lives were given to end that institution, and that wearing a patch celebrating national progress is not the same as endorsing everything that came before. One person brought up Frederick Douglass and his famous July 4th address, noting that it's entirely possible to acknowledge a nation's failures while still taking pride in how far it has moved. The comment section continued piling on.
People familiar with the plans, joining a handful of other leagues committed to publicly commemorating the 250th anniversary of the United States. The red, white, and blue patches are unveiled earlier this year by Fanatics in partnership with President Donald Trump. The league will have the patch added to the jerseys during its All-Star Game on July 25th in Chicago, as many people dodge gunfire to try to get in the arena. Yeah, I said it. Said the people who were granted anonymity.
Responses ranged from sharp historical corrections to blunt calls for her to step away from social media entirely. Several pointed out that without the United States and its professional sports infrastructure, the NBA wouldn't exist at all. Others noted the progress embedded in the 250 years being celebrated, rather than only the starting point. One particularly cutting remark noted that it showed progress, not regression, before adding a pointed insult about her grasp of history.
Arena. Yeah, I said it. Said the people who were granted anonymity because the details have not yet been announced. Now, the WNBA was not part of a formal January announcement when the NBA, NFL, MLB, UFC, and NASCAR, among others, announced they would feature the patch. So everybody, all these other leagues will feature the patch. But now, the WNBA is running scared. A WNBA spokesperson sent to Sportico the following statement.
Another suggested she was doing more to stir up division than the patch ever could. The broader frustrations expressed across the comments section centered on what many saw as a reflexive victim mindset being applied to a situation that didn't call for it. The consensus from critics was that the patch represents national growth, not a defense of what America looked like at its founding, and that conflating the two does a disservice to the actual history involved. Stewart's post, intended as a critique, ended up becoming the story itself, drawing far more attention to her views than to any official league announcement about the patch.
Sportico the following statement. Quote, like other major sports leagues, we are exploring how to best commemorate the country's 250th anniversary. Nothing has been finalized. The statement came more than 36 hours after Sportico asked for comment in the league. Bree Turner. You see right there, I wear this shit like a badge of honor, folks. Y'all just don't understand. No, she's blocked you. Okay. That's nice to see. So let's roll down here because this brainiac, this is why I keep telling people these higher degrees, you might as well wipe your ass with them. I mean, honestly, because I'm not. What's your degree in? Tiddlywinks? What are we? Let me guess. It's some social work degree. Whoever called for the WNBA All-Star uniforms to have the USA 250 patch should have thought that through. For the WNBA All-Star uniforms to have the USA 250 patch should have thought that through, considering no WNBA players would have been free 250 years ago. The majority wouldn't even have had freedom 100 years ago. Dumb. We know that to not be a fact, but okay. These players don't care about facts. The irony of all the USA 250 stuff is the vast majority of the people would not have been free 250 years ago. We are the most elite female athletes. 250 years ago, we would have been breeders. Female athletes, 250 years ago, we would have been breeders, are in the fields working all day. Be serious right now. Yes, I know this was probably a financial decision at the end of the day, but still. Woo-wee! You're getting crushed. Let's before we get to the comments directly, how about this? Jar Jar Binks. This person's got to be the dumbest human alive. I guess she forgot we had a civil war. My boy CDS. Bree Turner's breathtakingly, willfully ignorant. Combine that with